Welcome back to Retro Wednesday, the Tydirium Hangar. This is Mike, and Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, time with your family. And if you're away from your family, I hope you're still having a wonderful time and enjoying some time to yourself. But hopefully everybody can enjoy 1984. What was under your tree in 1984? If you compile a list, it is not going to be comprehensive. There's just going to be some fun stuff, but obviously the big hitters are on there. And I wanted to throw some curveballs. So you're going to get some curveballs in this mix. What's under the tree 1984 coming up. First off, kids were excited to get video games. People act like video games are a modern day era. No, it's not. Video games were huge back in the 80s, even in the late 70s, starting with the Atari 2600. But the ColecoVision was a different competitor to the Atari. And I've had this. Some people say it's superior. And I do think that it has more power to it than we saw with the Atari. But ColecoVision was a pretty strong competitor back in the day. And it actually spawned some toy lines. Then Atari 5200. Now this thing right here is the next generation of Atari. And I gotta say, they actually just went back to what worked properly. This thing was hard to hook up. It was not really that great. And it wasn't a huge leap and bound beyond the 2600 anyway. Some kids would have loved to have had this. I think it would have been a disappointing Christmas morning. I say this because I actually have two of these. Now, if you were a lucky kid, you might have gotten the greatest toy ever created, ever in the history of creating toys. Star Wars was still going strong in 1984. Coming off of the Return of the Jedi in 1983, people were still excited about stuff coming out, and the Imperial Shuttle came out. Now, I had no idea they made this. See, this is one of, if not the greatest toy ever made. It is epic. It's awe-inspiring by its size and the fact that Kenner went out of their way to make such a huge item in their line. And it is so amazing just to transport the Emperor around. Fantastic vehicle. My favorite in the vintage toy line. But as a kid, I didn't have that. I didn't know it existed. What did I get? I got this thing called an ISP-6 and had to pretend that this was an Imperial Shuttle. I didn't even know until the late 90s. They made the true Imperial Shuttle, which of course the channel is named after. Tydirium Hangar. Next up we have Dukes of Hazzard toys that would still be under the tree because it was still going strong at the time in the 80s from 1981 to 1985. And with that, kids would have still wanted some of these toys, or maybe they didn't, but I remember getting some of these back in the day when I was a kid, but it was more like the Hot Wheels sets, those kinds of things, which I actually wasn't so into. But I want to point this out because this is the year you would have probably gotten an official Koi Advance, probably the rarest figures in the toy line. These are actual ones that showed up, or maybe they were customs. But anyhow, I was really excited to pick these up. I missed out on them, Koi Advance. LJN was having a lot of fun with the wrestling superstars at the time. A lot of kids could have had some wrestling superstars under the tree. Now, I think the left side would be what you've gotten in 1984. I think the right side is what they were advertising to come out in 1985, if I'm correct, or if I'm wrong. I really am not into the wrestlers so much, but I ended up getting several of these when I was a kid just because that's what we get bought for you. And I have to admit, Hulk Hogan's really awesome. Next up, we have Kid Art Ghostbusters. You know, kids watched the movie with their parents, and it was such an iconic movie and wanted these toys under the tree so bad. And kids remember getting it in 1984, even though they weren't manufactured until 1986. So this is one of my curveballs to throw your way. So many people that still think they got these in 1984, they didn't exist. This was actually part of the cartoon in 1986 and forward in that toy line. It was a massive toy line by the way. And they've actually remade these figures, and I believe I got a picture, the official picture of Hasbro's remakes, and they're great. They might have been under your tree in the last few years. Another fun, underrated LJN toy line is Dune, the whole movie, the whole series, everything about Dune underrated, and it is the basis of part of Star Wars. So it is quite interesting with the history, but kids might have gotten these under the tree not because they wanted them, but because they were quickly clearanced out. And of course, if you got one that was clearanced out, it would probably look like this. Price tags are such a fun part of history, but when you get these price tags on your figures or on your toys that are wrapped up under the tree, the price gets crossed out. I mean, that's what has to happen. I still like looking at the price 40 years later. Next up, we got this fun little toy line of battery-operated vehicles, bigger than Hot Wheels and way more fun. These are Stompers, and I believe it was made by Shopper. These are great, fun, cheap toys. Now, they're not radio controlled, like that was a big rage. These were just simply slap one AA battery in, turn it on, and then you could clip and unclip the top. Pretty much the base was close to the same on almost all of them. You got a truck base, a car base, and the wheels were slightly different on them, but this was so much fun to have these Stompers, racing your Stompers. Really, at the end of the day, the only thing that really separated the speed of your Stomper was the strength of your AA battery. If you had a worn out battery, you'd lose. With the Stompers, it was so much fun. I don't really think any parents brought home the display for their kids under the tree, but it might have happened sometime in history. Next up, in 1984, you would still be getting GoBots. GoBots would still be getting released. I actually do not have the specifics on which characters released in 1984, but I do have to say that I know I got a lot of GoBots in 1984, and I was very happy to receive them. I was welcoming them, except for the fact that they started repainting the main characters, and I got some of those repaints. I was disappointed as a kid to get the repaints, but the main characters that were on the show, it's what you wanted, of course. The rest of them were just kind of fun little puzzles to convert or transform from one to the other. But GoBots might not be the only transforming toy on this list. Next up, we have Glue Babe A-Team toy line. Many different things that could have been under your tree in 1984, and I think they went all out. They had to really work hard on this toy line to compete with the likes of G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and all the other stuff that was going on in 1984 and prior to, which people were already starting to be addicted to G.I. Joe and Star Wars and all of that. And nobody really knew Star Wars was coming to an end. This was a great toy line. They have a jet, a Corvette, the iconic van, and then out of the blue, a boat. I mean, some stuff that we really didn't know. I didn't know this stuff was made back in the day. So much great stuff for this toy line. There's also a 5.5, almost 6-inch toy line that they made. Just the figures and a couple of vehicles that got released mostly in the Eurozone. But this is a fun toy line. A-Team was so much fun back in the 80s, especially 1984. Masters of the Universe was going strong in 1984. It might have been its heyday year, but they had more life left in the brand after that. I do want to say this. Snake Mountain came out that year. Snake Mountain, with a few of its drawbacks, is still an amazing playset. It looks phenomenal on display, and kids probably had a lot of fun. Kids did have a ton of imagination back in the 80s, especially 1984, and so a lot of fun could have been had with a Snake Mountain back in the day. Origins Snake Mountain that's recently released is phenomenal, and so with that you can recreate 40 years later what happened with this. There were also a ton of other releases with Battle Armor, He-Man and Skeletor, Buzz-Off, Fisto, Prince Adam, Mechanic, Orko, Jitsu, Whiplash, Cobra Khan. Also kind of cool, this is the Roton, the Road Ripper. Thank you, Toy Zinger, for breaking it down. If you really want to know about Masters of the Universe, I am not an expert. I count on ToyZinger.com. Next up, we have the Kenner Superpowers 1984. I have to admit this, that I was so excited to finally get a Superman. Out of this whole line, Superman was my favorite back in the day. Lucky for me, today he's still very easy to get in relatively decent shape. It's easy to get a Superman. By far my favorite in the entire toy line. But the toy line went really far. Well, 33 figures, I guess you can call that far. And there's so many cool characters, cool figures in this toy line, and play sets and vehicles and stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a very figure-centric toy line that is absolutely amazing. And all the kids getting these in 1984 were super excited to see them under the tree. Next up we have the Remco Secret of the Ninja. This was a very low budget toy line. It's still extremely low budget to collect in 2024, but this could have been under your tree because of the price point, because of the fact that Remco got this stuff out for a very good price, very cheap, and this was the precursor to their Karate Kid toy line that came years later. And these did not have the same gimmicks that you would see with the Karate Kid toy line that I know of, and I have to say, the Karate Kid toy line is very wildly popular with collectors today. These are still easy to get, that makes it fun, but the guy in blue in the card back, doesn't he look like David Carradine? The villain in Lone Wolf McQuade, gotta admit, one of the greatest villain portrayals in history, in cinematic history. Next up we have Remco's Zybots. These are not just budget Transformers, but they're ultra budget Transformers. This is a gift pack, a 6-pack of these figures, and they were very simplistic transformations that could be good, it could be bad, but I have to put it to the fact that these are even sub GoBot level pricing and sub GoBot level. I do not believe these have die cast in them, and I really do think that these were just quick cash grabs to try to grab some sort of that market for Transformers and GoBots that was out there during 1984. And guess what? Grandparents fell for it, bought it, and it ended up under your tree. Maybe parents were smarter. Grandparents fell for it. Sadly, if you were a kid in 1984 and you got one of these, you probably do have some sort of attachment to it. You probably appreciate this figure for what it is, or what it wasn't. In 1984, we got an expansive toy line of Knight Rider. No, we didn't. We got this. We got a couple other things that did not correspond with the scale and size. So if you just got this Kit and Michael, that's all you got, unless you wanted to get some Hot Wheels stuff or some other different types of things that they made and just slap the Knight Rider name on it. This is still an amazing Kenner Knight Rider vehicle, talking vehicle. It used a mini record player in it. It is very fickle to try to get one to work in 2024, and I know that from experience. Anyway, it's still an amazing vehicle that Kenner made back in the day, and they were dabbling in the 6-inch realm. Pretty cool. Are they ahead of their time? Or are they way behind? Next up, Black Star. You can have some Black Star figures under your tree. Kind of, people always looked at it as a knockoff of Motu, but Series 1 came out in 1983. 1984 brought you another John Blackstar with the Laser Light Chest, Clone Cloud Cat, the Riftrovic, Grossimir, Terra, Overlord, Cadre, Palace Guard, Neptune, Tongo, Gargo, Carpotrobit, Orange Demon, Pink Demon, Red Demon, Blue Demon. All this stuff, it was in the Series 2. Series 3 stuff came out in 85. By the way, I did do an entire video of the entire toy line of Black Star on this channel if you want to check it out. If you like transforming robots and they don't transform too much, they go from a lion to a limb, then you might like Voltron. Voltron was under my tree in 1984. I did get the Matchbox set. It was die-cast. It was amazing. I absolutely loved this thing back in the day. And I have to say, I still love it today. Voltron was amazing. And for several years, this set was on shelves. Also the fact that we had other competitors fighting for the space. Panache Place decided to do more than just put out a Voltron. They put out probably the worst Voltron in existence, but it still is iconic. An amazing castle, a slew of figures, the entire pilot team that fits in the Voltron, and a whole bunch of bad guys, a whole bunch of vehicles for the bad guys. What a great line. And with that, gotta go down in history as pretty much the best Castle of Lions that's ever been made and no one's beat it since. Did you have any of this stuff under your tree? Also, LJN made a motorized one that rolled. Every individual single bot rolled. The lions all had wheels on their stomach. 1984, I don't think anything was more magical for Christmas time than, guess what? Transformers. Now, I did get several of the cheap ones on my trips to Walmart from the time they were released, 1984, up until Christmas, but I had to wait for the expensive ones. If you look at this, the two expensive ones are on the right side of this picture, and of course, those are the ones that I had to wait to get under the tree at Christmas. This was the worst kept secret for what was under my tree when I asked 50,000 times when I'm going to get Optimus Prime. Can I get Optimus Prime? What can I do? My mom actually told me, your grandmother bought that for you for Christmas. Now, I was not upset. It just set my mind at ease. It was the greatest news I'd ever heard, and they came through. My mom actually got me Megatron, and I have to tell you that I was still way more excited for the Optimus Prime. Megatron is extremely iconic. We need a missing link version of this. Takara, step up your game. All right, let me know what you had under your tree, 1984. What do you have in 2024 that absolutely mirrors this? I can only think of a dozen or 20 items that would mirror what was going on in 1984 that we see in 2025 going forward. Merry Christmas, everybody. Enjoy your day with your family. And if you aren't with your family, still enjoy your day. And I hope this video made some people happy, put a smile on your face. Tydirium Hanger out.